So one of my favorite villain moments is when Bond is like sitting there playing with Solitaire's tarot cards, and he's like, the cards say we'll be lovers. Go ahead, pick a card. Any card. You do trust them, don't you?
When Bond meets Solitaire for the second time, the only thing I could think of is Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I feel like he's asking if she believes in the heart of the cards.
And she's like, well, they've never lied to me before.
She has this like big, ornate headdress and cape and stuff she wears while she's reading cards, but it's just like, it's fake. It like pops open and she steps out of it, and Bond sits in it. I don't know, it's goofy and weird.
And so she picks a card. Sure enough, it's the lover's card. They begin making out. The music swells. And we hear an amazing orchestral version of the movie's theme. And, you know, like, our hero's just like, he's getting the girl. He's getting the girl. And then he reveals that he stacked the deck. It only contains lovers cards.
Oh, Bond, you actually use the card trick to trick her into having sex with you. You piece of shit, Bond. You piece of shit. I mean, we saw you go into the tarot shop earlier. You must have bought a load of tarot cards, took all of the lovers cards out, and then put them into a special deck, but knowing they would match the deck that Solitaire was using?
But listen, earlier today in the movie, he slept with Rosie and then saw her murdered. And then he comes here with a fake tarot deck full of lover cards so that he can trick Solitaire using her religious beliefs into having sex with him in the same day that he had sex with Rosie before planning to murder her. Or, excuse me, he had sex with Rosie after planning to murder her. So he had sex with her and then was going to kill her. And then he comes here and uses this woman's religious beliefs to seduce her.
But yeah, you are a premeditated piece of shit.
They sleep together, and then she loses her virginity powers and puts both of their lives in danger.
Now Bond gets Solitaire. Do you remember the scene after he finds the Woman of the Cups tarot card, then goes into that tarot shop? It seems like a useless scene, but now we are shown that there was a point to that. He bought a ton of the lovers' cards to stack the deck in his favor. This film does show clear occult magic as something that exists, and yet Bond uses his coy and his intelligence to play with it.
And this is my favorite villain moment because James Bond is the villain.
Bond and Solitaire are now sneaking off to find something, and Kananga is completely okay with this, so long as Bond doesn't find whatever the hidden something is. The exact quote is, if he finds it, kill him. Why would you not kill him prior to that? This guy has been a pain in your butt this whole time and has now stolen your woman.
He drives a bus and causes police on the island to just go off the road and just flying off their bikes and into rivers and stuff.
We have now hit the first scene that starts making me question things.
Wow, that handbrake turn in the bus was epic.
Once again, this movie does love itself a chase scene, and there's two back-to-back brilliant chase scenes at this point in the movie. The first is Bond and Solitaire have found the heroin plants, and they're like, oh, this is a bit strange, and then they wander into a town, and there's like cops on motorcycles and cops in cars, and Bond's like, these cops totally all work for the baddies. We gotta escape. What are we gonna do? Oh, hey, a double-decker bus. And there's a chase scene in this movie, James Bond Live and Let Die, where James Bond gets into a chase scene in a double-decker bus. And it's very, very good.
Like, yeah, I could watch that over and over again.
My favorite two moments in this chase scene. The first is Bond needs to flip around because there's these motorcycles chasing him and they're going to catch up with him, so he's got to do something. So he drives across a wet patch of road and uses the water to be able to swing the bus around and spin it 180 degrees. And then the two motorcycle cops crash because water and motorcycles is a bad combination.
Like, you know, I'm going to give a clap to the stunt team that did that. Fantastic.
This bus scene, I'll give it to him that a bus might be the only thing you can find to just take, might already have the keys in it, and get around. The only super absurd thing that he does is that drift, but I was still willing to let this go because you literally need a vehicle to get somewhere, and it is a fairly short interaction. You know, cool, we haven't lost it yet.
My second favorite moment in this chase scene is the fact that it is silent. Like, not silent, there's sound effects, but there's no music happening right up until Bond turns down a street that has a warning that there's a low bridge up ahead. And just as he does that, the freaking theme song kicks in with a da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. It's so good.
He eventually tears the roof off this double-decker bus and crashes a cop car.
There are only a few vehicles in this movie, none of them being an Aston Martin.
We're back in New Orleans, and Bond is willing to hop into any taxi there is. Who cares about safety? And we hit my favorite character in this whole film, Arnold Williams as Cab Driver 1. The scene in New York was very short and short-lived, and it's like, I wish they had more of this character. And then he comes back, and the whole time, he's just referring to Bond as Jim. And this guy is great. I wish more villains would down-talk Bond by calling him Jim.
So they escape in the bus, right? They get in the boat, they get in a cab, and then immediately get taken to an airfield because, they've been captured again. So once again, they are fully in the hands of the baddies who have a perfect opportunity to murder James Bond dead, but instead of killing him, they're going to take him up in an airplane and throw him out of the airplane at 10,000 feet, when they could just murder him right here.
There's also a chase in a plane. After a little bit, he tears the wings off the plane, which is just hilarious.
At one point, and this is probably my favorite, James Bond is taxiing around at a small airport in a propeller plane, acting like a flying instructor for this poor woman that's just there for her flying lesson.
But no, James Bond escapes and gets in a plane and drives this little, this old woman is here for her flight lessons, and James Bond gets in the plane with her, and they drive this little plane all around the airport and get into a chase scene with cars in an airplane.
Bond just jumps in her plane. She's like, "Who the hell are you?" And Bond's like, I'm your flying instructor for the day. And she's like, "Okay, what's our lesson plan?" And he's like, "We're just going to wing it."
And it's ridiculous.
And they just drive around aimlessly.
Bond escapes like he always does in an airport. Kind of an interesting place to set this up. And the movie loses it. This is the part where it really drops the ball, is you're having a plane car chase. There's
cars chasing them, and these cars, they're not going fast. Bond is not going very fast. You don't go that fast, just taxiing like they're doing. And
in the end, Bond gets away, but the bad guys have gotten Solitaire, so I don't know why he didn't just fly the plane away in the first place. But it's goofy, it's fun, it very strongly echoes that chase scene in the parking lot from the last movie.
These cars are just running into every plane in this airport and just destroying everything inside. People jump out in front of the plane with guns like they're going to shoot it, and then they're immediately like, "No, this is a bad idea. There is a propeller on that plane. It's going to cut me a lot. Really bad." And eventually Bond flies through a hangar door as they're shutting them. The wings get ripped off.
Wow, light aircraft planes are really flimsy, aren't they?
And the woman he's giving the lessons to, she's like, "Holy shit!" That's exactly what her voice sounds like. And it's just so silly and stupid. I enjoyed it.
And Bond in previous films, it seems like he's fairly handy with operating aircraft and can never seem to get this thing off the ground. But in general, this is where you suddenly realize, Scooby and the gang are back.
As goofy as this plane scene is, it's also kind of hilarious.
It's ridiculous. There's no reason for this chase scene to be here, except for they were just like, what America loves right now? America loves blaxploitation movies and chase scenes. Let's make one movie that's got it both.
I think it works.
So the movie has officially lost it, but there are still some good parts.
Later on, we hear in the background the owner of the airport arguing with the CIA about how expensive, about all the damage and stuff. So that's a nice touch.
So, when Bond walks into the New Orleans club, it sounds like they just walked into a very different kind of movie. Bow chicka wow wow.
So now Bond is not only motivated to find out what's going on with Kananga and Mr. Big, but he's also motivated to rescue Solitaire, which leads him straight back into Kananga's lair. He goes to another of those cafes. He gets pulled down through a floor that retracts and pulls his table underneath this time.
Now, this is the second time Bond's gone to one of these filet-o-fish shops, or filet-o-flay, and they've had some sort of trapdoor or revolving wall. Like, how much mechanical equipment would you need? Especially thinking about this in the 70s. Like, they don't have as much small stuff as we have nowadays. Like, how much stuff would that need? How much would that have cost? Like, Jesus. Like, think of the logistics and having to build all this stuff, getting the workmen in. Like, it's just, this is bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
Also, kind of an interesting touch to have like a cover of the theme song in the movie. Felt kind of meta.
I like Kananga in this movie.
So we're led to believe that the villain of the movie is Dr. Kananga.
And there's Mr. Big saying that Solitaire belongs to his friends Kananga, and that she's so special because she can see the future, but only because she's a virgin. And did you touch that? Which is a just gross line.
One of my favorite moments is when he's questioning Bond as Mr. Big, and when Bond refuses to answer and only talk to Kananga, he pulls off his freaking face.
But the twist is that Mr. Big is Dr. Kananga.
And then Mr. Big peels his face off because it turns out Kananga and Mr. Big are the same person.
Which is kind of weird.
This scene where Bond is being interviewed by Mr. Big reveals himself to being Kananga, which is kind of whatever.
I felt like that reveal wasn't really earned, but I honestly didn't see that coming. It begs the question, why? As with a lot of things in this movie.
Because regardless who he is, ruthless dictator, ruthless drug dealer, he isn't afraid to get his hands dirty.
But it does also establish that Kananga also does not understand Solitaire's magic, only that it works. He doesn't have any genuine love there, but he is genuinely worried about losing this tool that is so pivotal for his work.
And he follows in the great footsteps of villains of old, and lays out his entire plan to Bond in a very eloquent speech.
Probably the best villain moment is when President Kananga reveals that he is also Mr. Big.
Surprise, they're the same person.
So Kananga has a guy who does his maniacal laugh for him. Love it.
It was actually a great reveal. I loved him pulling off the makeup. Later on in the same scene, he tricks Solitaire and Bond and figures out Solitaire's working against him. And he even makes Bond think he's going to be let go.
And his whole plan to flood the heroin market and run the competition out of business and just get a whole bunch of people in America addicted to heroin.
Of note, the street value of his heroin, $1 billion in 1973, is worth $5,744,527,027.
Mr. Big's evil villain plot is basically to give out free heroin.
It's very villainous.
While yes, that would qualify as, maybe something that you shouldn't do, it also doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense from a business standpoint.
That's not bad loss if you can cut out all your competition. I mean, the guy runs an island. That can't be that much money for him.
So here Kananga has Bond right in his grasp. He can just murder him. And instead he sends Tee-Hee to take him to an alligator farm that's also their heroin operation to murder him there instead of doing it when he has his hands on him. Is that 4 or 5 times now?
And now we go back into the tropey. Instead of just killing Bond right then and there, we're going to let him get eaten by alligators and crocodiles. And I will say, as someone who grew up wanting to be a herpetologist and who loved Steve Irwin, I am glad that this film clarified that there were both alligators and crocodiles and their differences in the water.
So we got the amazing alligator scene in the bayou.
That being said, there's a terrible scene in which James Bond runs across a bunch of crocodiles.
So when they get to the alligator farm, Teehee gives Bond a little tour first. He's like, check it out. This is where we make our heroin. So you can see we've got like a very ornate lab setup here. It definitely would be a shame if this building caught on fire. And out here we have our alligators. They're very vicious. One of them ate my arm. That's how come I only have one arm. Over here we've got a flat screen television that retracts into the ceiling, and behind it is an aquarium. So, when you have company over, you can put the TV away and you just have this aquarium full of ornate fish to look at. But then when company's here, that comes down and you've got the TV screen. And then over here we have my closet that's just for Claus. It's just a closet for Claus. I have another closet where I keep my suits, but this one's just for Claus. It's very nice. Thank you for coming to my alligator farm on MTV Cribs.
I honestly think this is one of the most clever uses of a gadget, or should I say non-use of a gadget.
And then he puts Bond in the middle of the alligator pit and doesn't shoot him and doesn't stay to watch. He just leaves Bond standing in the middle of the alligator pit and goes, haha, this time he will die. This time, surely, the 6th time, I believe, that we've got James Bond in a very easy to murder position, he will be murdered without our interference. We'll just leave him alone and he will definitely die.
But my favorite escape is actually after he gets captured and he's taken through the drug warehouse.
Bond uses his watch to try and pull a boat towards him in the swamp.
He tries to bring a metal canoe towards him, and it's tied off, so it actually doesn't go anywhere, and he's stuck.
Bond is on this little tiny island in the middle of an alligator-infested swamp, and he's trying to pull this metal boat towards him with his Q watch, but it gets snagged because it's tied down on a rope.
But can we talk about how powerful that magnet is? If Bond can move a boat from across a pond, say like 30 feet, I don't see how it couldn't peel the fillings out of someone's teeth from 5 feet away. And has a saw on it? I mean, how big is the battery? Do you have to charge it every day or something? This is back in the 70s.
He runs across the top of several crocodiles to escape being eaten alive, essentially.
It's great.
So Bond runs on the backs of the alligators and he escapes and he gets away and he burns down the whole arrow in operation.
And if you weren't sure that the movie had completely lost it, by this point, running atop the alligators, done. It's over. All my respect is gone.
And will eventually be the first amount of cheese in the Moore series of films.
I love when they kind of play with the tropes a little bit like that. It's like, well, of course Bond's going to use this gadget to get out of this one, but then it's great when it doesn't quite work out for him.
Now, if you've been listening to our recap here and you're thinking, man, this movie sounds like it has a lot of chase scenes, don't you worry. We haven't even gotten to the chase scene yet. Because what happens next is James Bond jumps in a boat to escape from the baddies, and another baddie jumps in a boat, some other baddies jump in a car, and everybody starts a big boat chase.
The boat chase is pretty fantastic.
I'm going to start this boat chase off by saying something nice. This is really cool. It's very inventive. This is a fun chase in many, many ways. And I thought this could have been one of the strongest chases in recent Bond films.
But it wasn't because of the boats, it was just entertaining watching the cops destroy every law enforcement vehicle in the state of Louisiana.
But it has problems.
Oh, I'm sure lots of people are going to have lots to say about the police arrest. But the chase scene was excellent. And I don't think actually Bond has actually had any reason to use his gun yet in this film. It's all just, Bond, being really skillful. But yeah, the boat chase, which feels like it's like 20 minutes long, and then there's just more and more police getting involved. And these police are not very intelligent people. Is that an accurate portrayal of the American police system? I don't know. No comment from me.
This speedboat chase is absolutely bonkers.
And the chase scene is great because it's just this intense boat chase where boats are flying down the water and then they go up on land. There's a part where Bond takes his boat up on land to get the baddie to follow him. The baddie's boat ends up falling in a pool. Bond jumps out of his boat, jumps back in another boat and takes off again.
Those boats wouldn't have survived the first time they jumped on the land.
I kept thinking about how banged up those boats would have been in real life if they'd gone over the land so many times.
Also, boats can fly across a good 70 feet of land?
It's very good. It's very fun. It's very ridiculous.
Maybe that is something that's possible, but this was stretched out so long. I was even okay with that very first boat hop. It was cool. It was fun.
And they did it 4 times.
There was a wedding, apparently, in the middle of the bayou.
Also, that wedding. Ugh, this must have been so miserable in that heat.
And it's what makes this movie, like this chase scene, I feel like is the most memorable thing from this movie.
For starters, from the time James Bond hops into the boat till the time he is seen out of the boat is 13 minutes. We are introduced to a whole slew of characters who have no meaning whatsoever.
The most capable henchman's name was Adam? Yep, just Adam. He was the guy who chased down Bond, first in the car, then the boat. Then he gets away from J.W. Pepper, and he coordinated all the attacks and eventually ended up stealing Bubba's boat. I mean, he was on top of it for a while before he died.
Somehow, the main gangster knew about Billy Bob and just went to his address and grabbed his boat.
And we meet one of the most important characters in the Roger Moore era of the James Bond franchise, Sheriff J.W. Pepper.
Here we have Sheriff J.W.
Let's talk about J.W. Pepper for a minute.
Now, Sheriff J.W. Pepper is a white hillbilly. He's a redneck, southern, racist hillbilly caricature. He is the most caricatured character in this movie, which if I have to give this movie credit for its attempt to not be horribly racist while making a racist movie, it is that they made the most ridiculous character a dumb white guy. And you know, the world needs more of pointing out how terrible dumb white guys are. Unfortunately, he's just kind of silly and not like, they don't show him, I assume he's racist. I don't know that they actually, he does pull up. Anyway, he's awful. He's the worst. He's just here for comedic purposes, and it's okay. But really, he works because the backdrop of this chase scene is so good that having him to spat out ridiculous, like, rants in the middle of it works okay.
All kinds of stereotypes in this movie.
Okay, I love and I hate him. I get the comic relief stuff, and he seems at one point just to be a racist caricature, and it's sometimes just a sad sack. It gets worse when he shows up in the next movie, but at least then he's like getting culture. This time he's showing people how dumb Southerners are. I mean, over the radio he's supposed to go kill a rabid dog after he pulls over Adam. So there's no real crime in his parish, he's just a sheriff over no one.
But it just dragged out so long, and they were just shoving a whole other entire movie. This was a Fast and the Furious movie in 13 minutes.
So now that Bond is really on the case because he's got to rescue Solitaire, because if there's nothing that motivates James Bond like a woman, we get into the real voodoo of it all.
Now it's voodoo time.
So let's talk about this ritual scene here.
All right, now we get into that uncomfortable territory, the 6-minute long tribal dance sequence.
We've seen a couple shots of this voodoo cult. I don't know. It's not a cult. I don't know what to call it. They are murdering people. Anyway, I'm uncomfortable with the voodoo scenes because I don't imagine that they hired a practitioner of voodoo to verify the validity of the imagery that they use throughout this movie. It feels like appropriation, and it seems bad and problematic.
This movie released in 1973, and I feel like at this point in time, they should have had a better grasp or respect of showing tribal dances on screen. There should be enough information out there. Maybe this is exactly what it looked like. I could be totally wrong, but I'm just gonna say, based on what they were doing on screen, none of this is accurate, and this is all total BS.
But I do have to give the scene where Bond is sneaking up on the voodoo ritual a little bit of credit for Bond's use of black slacks and a black turtleneck, because that's a very good look for James Bond, and I like it here. Roger Moore looks good in that outfit.
What exactly is Baron Samedi's role in all this?
Okay. It's the Baron.
Baron Samedi was an interesting character in this movie.
I'm pretty sure this guy still gives me nightmares. Oh, nightmare. Tyler, I'm in a room. But yeah, I think somewhere between watching this film as a kid with my dad and watching Temple of Doom, also with my dad, gave me huge nightmares of men with skull faces and waving snakes in my faces and trying to rip my heart out.
Again, always seemed to be traveling around Kananga wherever he's at, dressed up as a normal person or as a crazy voodoo henchman.
So Baron Samedi is this character that's shown up throughout the movie. Weirdly, he was at the hotel, starring in a musical number at the hotel, but he's also actually part of Mr. Big / Kananga's operation, and also maybe is actually a supernatural figure who has the ability to come back from the dead, because he definitely dies in this scene. Just remember that. He's dead. He gets thrown into a pit full of snakes who eat him alive. He dead.
All these henchmen have like side jobs or something, because he was shown working at a hotel entertaining the honkies and actually, sacrificing people on the side.
And suddenly coming out of the ground. Having clay heads. Terrifying, man. This film absolutely scared the living Jesus out of me when I was a kid.
Does he always have like a fake body double, or are they implying that he's actually supernatural?
He's come out of the ground. Oh, God.
I did like the little gadget they used for him to bring up from the grave in the voodoo village to trick the people.
Oh, why is his head made out of clay? This is so confusing. He looks so real coming out the ground.
Now, to compound the problem with this scene is that the witch doctor appears, gets his head blown off, and it turns out it's a duplicate. And then the real witch doctor appears, and it takes all of about a minute to do this guy in. So you have 6 minutes of complete awkwardness, and then what is clearly one of the strongest villains in the film is just done in immediately.
Whew, yeah, man, that Baron, even watching it now, as a kid, I see him and I'm just like, please go away, get off my screen. Scary, man.
I have one bone to pick, though. He's playing the flute at one point, and then suddenly it's a radio. That's not how flutes work, sir.
That snake right there is super fake.
Ooh, a high-tech underground voodoo layer.
I gotta hand it to him. Kananga's cave layer is awesome.
Yeah, this is definitely a Bond film.
Favorite vehicle? It would have to be the monorail. This, I think, is our second monorail of the James Bond series. They really must love just building a monorail in underground layer sets.
Actually, Kananga has more gadgets than some of the other villains. For some reason, the Pitmobile has a silenced crossbow dart in the mirror with a TV to aim. How often does that come in handy? All of his restaurants have trick booths and tables. He has an underground monorail for some reason. Okay, Blofeld. Hidden rooms, a Mr. Big makeup kit, a complete army of people working for him in every city and country he operates in. I have a feeling that Kananga is only trying to sell drugs so he can have more stuff.
The best kill in this movie is it's when Bond takes down the main villain, Kananga.
Bond kills the witch doctor at 1 hour and 47 minutes, at which point most films from this era would already be over. But it's not, because Kananga needs to talk again. They really should have called him Mr. E for exposition. I don't know that I've seen another Bond villain that just likes to keep talking every time he sees this guy. Just shoot him. You have let him live so many times.
So Bond has Solitaire now. They infiltrate Kananga's lair. They find out that he's got this shark pit, and they get captured. And Kananga's got another opportunity to murder James Bond, and instead he ties him to a hook and cuts his arm so that there's blood falling in the water, and slowly lowers the hook into a tank full of sharks that are going to eat him alive. Instead of just shooting him, just shoot James Bond in the head.
No, Kataganga, why are you falling into the trap of having elaborate kills? Like, why tie him to a thing and cut him and descend him into sharks? All that's going to happen is that he's going to put something inflatable inside you and you're going to fly up to the sky and explode.
We have another awesome gadget in this movie, which leads us to one of the dumbest deaths in the entire Bond franchise, in the entire series history.
I'd like to talk a little bit about Chekhov's gun. The theory of Chekhov's gun is that if you have a gun in the first act of a play, then the gun has to go off by the third act of the play. Now, this could also be called Q's gadgets. You could call this trope, because if Q introduces you to a gadget at the beginning of the movie, you better believe that the gadget is going to come into play by the end of the movie. Now, Q's not in this movie, but M does give Bond a new watch from Q Labs that is magnetic, and Bond has used it a couple times throughout the movie. He's used it to undress a woman. He tried to use it to pull a boat towards him in the Gator Park, but that didn't work out. But he's reminded us that this magnet exists, so of course it's going to come into play here to save James Bond at the last minute, and it comes into play by being a saw. The magnetic watch is a saw. This is like if Chekhov pulled the gun off of, well, Chekhov was the playwright, but anyway, it's like if Chekhov's gun was actually a telescope that saved the day in the third act. Like if the watch is a saw, you have to tell us the watch is a saw in order for it to foreshadow the fact that the watch is going to be a saw later on.
My favorite moment with Whisper was when he tried yelling, "Watch out!" in the underground base, but nobody could hear him.
they're fighting. Kananga was trying to lower Bond and Solitaire into a shark tank. And so Kananga and Bond are in the shark tank, like fighting. Bond's bleeding, attracting the shark.
So Bond gets free. He's fighting Kananga. They go back and forth. They're in the water. They're out of the water. And hey, did we mention that Bond's got a shark gun that's got is a bullet that is full of compressed air, and so when you shoot into something, it makes it swell up real big and pop it in the sky.
He's got this compressed air thing that's used in, like, I don't know, anti-shark weaponry.
The compressed gas pellet.
Sure. And shoves it in Kananga's mouth. Shoves his head underwater.
To keep this mystery machine rolling, Bond shoves a compressed gas pellet into Kananga's mouth to defeat him.
And Kananga just starts, like, filling up like a balloon. And I know you think I'm joking. He fills up like a balloon.
It causes him to expand into a balloon.
Floats to the top of, like, the layer.
And he floats. I guess it was filled with helium. I'm not entirely sure what the use would be.
Hits the ceiling and explodes like a balloon. There's no blood, there's no guts.
That's what he does to Kananga. He shoots him, and he swells up real big and goes floating up the ceiling and then pops.
He's just a balloon.
That then explodes.
And that is how the big bad is killed in this movie.
Oh wow, that actually happened. He swallowed the inflatable thing and flew up into the sky and exploded.
It's weird.
That single scene encompasses the entire tone of the Roger Moore Bond movies.
But I thought that could have been such a good scene. He could have just blown up in the water, and then there would just be, like, red coming up, and the sharks would be going crazy. Kind of like they did in Thunderball.
Just imagine if he exploded and, like, blood and guts went over, like, just all over everyone. Be a totally different movie.
Now, this movie has had a lot of James Bond hanging out in a boat, so I guess Roger Moore's feeling a little seasick. So instead of putting Bond and the girl on a boat at the end of the movie, they're on a train. And we get this nice, peaceful little montage of them going across the countryside, playing cards, having sex. Oh, wait, what's that? It's a clawed hand cutting out of a mailbag on the train because Teehee's not dead. He's come back to kill James Bond.
The other guy, whose name I haven't mentioned yet, is Teehee. Teehee, apparently is his name, is Julius Harris with the metal arm. He and the Baron Samedi both kind of felt like the odd job of this film, but because there were two, it was now odd and odder, and neither one really got to shine, except for that forced fight scene ending. How do you not know that there is an 8-foot-tall man with a metal arm in your U.S. mail sack?
I think they were intending for this fight scene to be a echo of the fight scene from For Russia With Love, but the whole fight scene centers around Teehee just trying to, like, stab his weird little claw arm at James Bond, and the claw arm doesn't look good, and so the fight scene just doesn't feel good, and James Bond ends up, he cuts the wires in the claw arm, and it clamps on the window, and Bond throws him out the window, and then Solitaire's like, oh my god, what happened? And he goes, just being disarmed. Wait, that's my Sean Connery. I don't have Roger Moore. He goes, just being disarming, sweetie. Or sweetheart? Sweetheart? Darling? Darling. Probably darling. Anyway, that was his quip. It was just being disarming because he threw the guy out his window and the arm stayed behind.
Another little fun note about Julius Harris, the 6-minute long voodoo dance scene made me think of 1933's King Kong. As it turns out, 3 years after Live and Let Die release, Julius Harris was a main character in 1976's King Kong re-release.
So after one last scuffle with Kananga's henchman Teehee and his claw-handed prosthetic, Bond and his girl throw him out the side of a train and decide to make out like nothing just happened.
The greatest villain in this movie and the most underutilized would be the Baron Samedi, the witch doctor. I feel like this guy in the film, it kind of shows that he's just there for the fun of it. He can't be killed. He really is a witch doctor. He has an understanding of how tarot works. He seems to just toy with that.
And the movie ends with Baron Samedi sitting on the front of the train because he's not dead, because the supernatural exists in the world of James Bond.
And with the end of this film showing that he's still alive, to me that sort of proves this guy's the real deal, that he has been the true threat all along, and just enjoying the fun of being with Kananga. But they really underutilized that character, and I felt so bad. That could have been such a good, strong character in this film.
And right as the movie ends, we see Baron Samedi on the train laughing maniacally for no goddamn reason.
See, this is why this film scared me. The voodoo man is still alive at the end. Like, he kills him in the middle of the film, puts him in a coffin full of deadly snakes, but he's still there on the train.
And that's how the movie ends. And no, it's not a cliffhanger. We don't see this guy again. He doesn't do anything. He just looks cool and laughs creepily.
Final thoughts on the movie. It's pretty bad. It has a great theme song. And it's got some good parts, like the action in it's pretty good.
Everything about the end of the film, from Whisper to the really bad fight scene with Kananga to the kind of awkward shoved in fight scene on the train, this movie ends on a very slow and sour note.
It's way too long. There's good variety in like the different types of action scenes you see. Like I said earlier, there's boat chases, there's car chases, bus chases, on-ground plane chases, there's a train chase, there's crocodiles, there's sharks. Like it's a very crazy movie.
And that's Live and Let Die. It's, it's got some fun moments. It's actually got a lot of fun moments.
For once, it was kind of nice to not have Spectre or Blofeld behind everything. It's a good change of pace in that regard. It's also a double-edged sword because the connected through line was cool, but then again, the one-off missions are also kind of one of the reasons that the series is still going strong after all these years. As much as fans like myself enjoy the formula, it can also be a detractor at times. If it's not handled right, it can feel very by the numbers.
But I think between it having a plot that seems like a smaller scale plot than the kind of world-ending plots that we've gotten used to from Blofeld, and the fact that so much of this movie is mired in being of its time. We've had that with the Sean Connery movies in the terms of like a lot of misogyny and things like that, but this movie really has a lot of issues in that, it is explicitly a blaxploitation movie made by white people, and that just does not feel good.
What would I change about this movie? Knowing that this is from an era of blaxploitation movies, I would have really liked them to take the chance to make one of the stronger and more positive characters a black actor. Why couldn't Solitaire have been a black woman?
Probably going against most of the other podcasters. I don't think this movie is as problematic as it could be. There's a solid African-American cast, they show black leaders, and even in the boat chase, the bad guys get the upper hand against the inept cops.
And I know it's a trope of Bond to take like whatever's popular at the time and like integrate it into the Bond universe. And at the time, blaxploitation was very popular.
It would have been great if they had the new Felix for this movie be a black actor.
It didn't feel good when I watched it before. It certainly doesn't feel good in the climate of the world today. So Live and Let Die is an interesting movie that is kind of ruined by the context that it presents. If this wasn't a blaxploitation movie, if you took all of the action and all of the gags from this movie and put them in a different plot, I think it would work a lot better.
I get what they were going for with this movie,
but I just think making a movie where 99.9% of the black characters are villains and 99.9% of the white characters are heroes is just bad.
There was a large cast, which for the time was groundbreaking, but also very trending because of blaxploitation.
And it's great that they had such a diverse cast. Just the fact that they made almost every single African-American character a villain or ineffectual is just not okay.
Where they fell short in this movie is they're all bad guys.
The problems would be like the voodoo village and the dated language. but we're coming off 3 straight consecutive years of Shaft movies.
I've read some justifications where people are like, but Kananga's like a very capable villain. He's not, like falling over himself. Like he's not a joke. He's a very jokey death. But I still don't think that makes this whole setup good.
Or if you had more black characters that weren't evil and more evil characters that weren't black.
It's definitely progress compared to what you have in the book, but it's pretty clear that this is the early 70s and we still have a long way to go. Then again, unfortunately, the same could still be said of America in 2020.
Then you could still have had it be kind of build on the tropes of blaxploitation without explicitly having it be like black people are bad, which seems to be the message of this movie and makes this movie probably not worth watching anymore.
And if they really wanted to make a difference, they would have, even just for this movie, made James Bond a black actor.
But, like I said, this is the only James Bond movie I've seen, so this is my favorite and least favorite James Bond movie.
James Bond will return in? Oh, God.
The Man with the Golden Gun.
Yay, podcasting.
Podcasters Assemble Season 003 is a production of the We Can Make This Work Probably Podcast Network. Find more of our shows at probablywork.com and learn how to contribute to future episodes of Podcasters Assemble by looking us up on Twitter at Casters Assemble or joining our Discord server, link in the show notes. Submissions are always open. Thank you to everyone who was able to contribute to this episode. Be sure to check the show notes for links where you can find them all online. Thank you.
This has been a presentation
of the We Can Make This Work
Probably Network.
Follow us on Twitter
at Probably Work
for more of our questionable content.
Also, we have a website called probablywork.com.
Podcasters Assemble will return in The Man with the Golden Gun.
He's still there on the train, man. It's terrifying. I mean, what is going on? Like, he's got the skull face. He's got voodoo. He's everywhere. He's got a weird whistle. Oh, it's too scary for me. Sorry, I'm out. I'm done.